We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
The Dialogue, the community voice of Southern California's young professional network. Relevant discussions about the thoughts, concerns, opportunities, and challenges faced by today's generational leaders. Real talk, real people. This is The Dialogue. The Dialogue with Starlett Quarles on LA Talk Live and streaming live at www.latalklive.com.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to The Dialogue. Real talk, real people. I'm your host, Starlett Quarles, and we're on live at latalklive.com and streaming live in Omaha, Nebraska at 1690 AM. The one, the voice of the voiceless. As always, The Dialogue is the voice of our generation, so thank you so much for joining us here every Wednesday from 5 to 6, where we like to discuss the topics, thank you, Richard, that are relevant to today's generational leaders. It is May. We are starting a new series this month called The Black Experience. As you know, we are trying to prepare you for the upcoming mayoral election, as well as our event on May 11th, a dialogue with Black LA. 600 people have already RSVP'd for a dialogue with Black LA, and we are very excited about our event next Saturday, May 11th at West LA College. As you know, this event is dedicated to the creation of a Black agenda for us here in Los Angeles, and we're going to be tackling 7 agenda items. They are education, health, economic development, political accountability, criminal justice, the faith community, and cultural competency. I'll also be conducting one-on-one interviews with both LA candidates for mayor, Eric Garcetti and Wendy Gruhl, on exactly what they're going to do for Los Angeles and how we as a community can hold them accountable to a Black agenda. Now, as we've been doing all week long, I've been giving you poll updates on the mayoral election, and an exclusive eyewitness news poll conducted by Survey USA shows Gruhl has a 3-point lead. Now, that's a drastic turn from 2 weeks ago when the poll showed Eric Garcetti with a 9-point lead. So the race is getting very, very touchy, y'all. And they're also, as we have been saying, fighting for the vote of the Black community. But again, we want to encourage you not to get caught up in these polls or all these endorsements, but are these candidates the best candidate for you, for your community? Are they meeting your needs and your community's needs? We want you to be an educated voter. So please try to attend as many community groups, community meetings, mayoral debates here in Los Angeles to get to know the candidates for yourself. I'm also watching debates on Channel 7 News. There's another one coming up on May 10th on Channel 7. So get to know these candidates and see if they are the best candidates for our Black community. Again, don't forget our dialogue with Black LA on Saturday, May 11th from 8 to 4 p.m. at West LA College. You can RSVP at our website, dwbla.com. In addition to my candidate conversations with both Eric and Wendy, we'll also be having 2 panel discussions on the Black agenda. Some of our panelists include Congresswoman Karen Bass, Assemblywoman Holly Mitchell, LA City Councilwoman Jan Perry, and our special, very, very special guest for tonight, Dr. Maulana Karenga, who is the creator of Kwanza, if you don't know, and he will be talking about cultural competency at a Dialogue Black LA. But today he's going to help us talk about the Black experience, and he's launching our series today on the Black experience. And we're so excited to have him in the studio today. So if you're interested in asking Dr. Karenga a question, please give us a call at the second half of our show. The number 323-247-7443. Again, 323-247-7443. The phone lines are now closed, but we will open them up at or tweet me at StarQuar. Today's show is brought to you, as always, by Urban X Marketing and our friends at The Wave Newspaper, where you can check them out at wavenewspapers.com. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to get started on our conversation on the Black experience and our conversation with Dr. Maulana Karenga. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back from the dialogue with me, Starlett Quarles. We'll be right back.
have or know of someone with a child or adult family member with developmental disabilities that would benefit from a social recreation program in the South Los Angeles area? At Ability First's Harry A. Meyer Center at 8090 Crenshaw Boulevard in Inglewood, we offer afternoon and after-school care programs for children and adults with disabilities, which include socialization, recreation, community outings, independent living skill training, as well as physical fitness activities. You can reach us at 323-753-3101 and visit us at www.abilityfirst.org.
Young Connection, your one-stop connection for all your graphic design and commercial printing needs. Young Connection is a full-service printing and media design company dedicated to providing the highest level of customer service and satisfaction. Young Connection provides swift response and rapid turnaround services for banners, brochures, business cards, letterheads, church bulletins, funeral programs, flyers, logo design, posters, and much, much more, all at an affordable price. Young Connection, the official printing company of LA Talk Live. Give them a call at 310-491-3336. That's 310-491-3336, or visit their website at www.youngconnection.com. That's www.youngconnection.com. Young Connection Printing and Media Services, proud sponsors of LA Talk Live, where it's more than just talk.
Just keep on pressing on. The sky's the limit, and you know that you can have what you want. Sky's the limit, and you know that you can have what you want. Be who you are.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the dialogue. Real Talk, Real People. I am your host, Starlett Quarles, and we are launching our series this month on the Black experience. And we have a very special guest in the studio with us today, Dr. Maulana Karenga, who is the creator of Kwanza. Also joining us is my producing partner, Mr. Steve Burt, on our conversation for the first half hour. Now, before we get into our conversation with Dr. Karenga, let me please officially introduce you to him. Dr. Maulana Karenga is a professor and chair of Africana Studies at California State University, Long Beach. He holds 2 PhDs. He is an activist, scholar of national and international recognition. He has played a major role in Black intellectual and political culture since the 1960s, especially in Black studies, the Black Power, Black Arts, Million Man March, Day of Absence, and other social movements. He is also the executive director of the African American Culture Center, US, as well as the creator of the Pan-African Cultural Holiday, Kwanza. And he's also an author of numerous scholarly articles and books. And we're going to talk a little bit about his new book that he's going to be launching this year. So please welcome Dr. Maulana Karenga to the dialogue. Welcome. I'm so glad to see you.
It's good to be here.
I love me some Dr. Karenga.
Thank you so much.
So welcome. And you also are going to be gracing our panel next week talking about the Black agenda. So let me just ask you, because we've been asking our guests for the past couple of months, what are your thoughts on the creation of a Black agenda, especially here in Los Angeles, and why is it so important for us to be able to do that?
Yeah. Well, agenda, first of all, established our core interests, okay? And that, at the same time, not only tell us what our interests are, it also tells us about who we are.
Okay.
It also, third, gives us a program for work and struggle.
Okay.
And also, what it does is serves as a rating system for anyone who wants our support in a political process.
I mean, we often get caught. Now, what do you think about all these endorsements? You know, you have all these religious leaders and civic leaders in L.A. I mean, how do they expect us to interpret their endorsements?
I'm vice president of the BCCLA, which is the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance. And we've developed a system for this, a covenant. We believe we should have covenant-based politics rather than transactions of convenience.
Okay.
And a lot of times, the endorsement process is a transaction of convenience that might benefit the person making it, but doesn't speak to the needs of the people.
I love
Sometimes
that you said that.
those things are made because people know each other, because they're going to get something from it either now or in the future, but it does not necessarily translate as benefit for the mass. It might even confuse personal interest with collective interest, class interest for mass interest. So we have to stay away from that and ask what is good for our community. And we, as a self-conscious community, have both the right and responsibility to define and defend and promote our interests. And that's what an agenda is about, defining, defending, and promoting our interests.
So what do you think about the two candidates?
Well, I don't have any opinion on that.
Okay.
I only have opinion on what we should be about.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, part of our agenda for dialogue is the inclusion of cultural competency. Why should that be important in terms of our creation of a black agenda?
Well, it depends on what you mean by cultural competence. So why don't you tell me when you say cultural competence, you're talking about the people working with us, the people...
Just
like
black people in
education?
general. Yeah, absolutely.
In education. Oh, yeah. Well, if we're talking about people having cultural competence in education, that means they're able to relate in dignity affirming and effective ways with the people that they're teaching.
Excellent.
And a lot of times people stand outside and they look at people who are different as a problem and a task rather than seeing them as a fruitful way to engage the diversity of what it means to be human. We take the position that each people and culture is a unique and equally valid and valuable way of being human in the world. There's no way for me to be human except as an African. So I don't come in and take off my blackness like a yellow wig at night and then put it back over.
You said a yellow wig.
I'm sorry. I'm dramatizing it. See? So this is what I am. Black is not only my identity, it's my destiny and therefore my duty.
But do you
This
think
is
black
what I'm
peop-
going to be.
But don't you think black people should think that way about themselves?
Don't you think they should?
Yeah, I mean,
Of
just
course,
as a
of course,
people.
of
And I
course,
don't
of
think that
course.
we
And
embrace...
I think many do. And
Okay.
one of the things we have to do when we talk about black people is not picture them in pathological ways.
Okay.
They have problems, but white people got problems. White people got some serious problems because they got problems with everybody they met. So I just think it's very important for us not to put an undue burden on black people for what they're not doing.
Okay.
Because they're living in a context of oppression. And even though we all must take moral responsibility for what we do in the end, there are certain conditions we shouldn't have to work out. If we say we're citizens in this country, as Malcolm said, and this is the month, this day becomes the month of his birth and coming into being, if we're citizens, we ought to have all the rights. You can't be a second-class citizen. You can't be a half a citizen. So what's happening here is that we're living in a context of oppression that not only shapes but sometimes determines our life conditions and our life possibilities.
Okay. All right, Steve, you had a question.
Yeah, just on the cultural competency, because it is a very broad and widely used term. And you talked about how the people that deal with us in education, as it applies to cultural competency, that they be able to relate and work with us. I was wondering, and this is just my thought, but does it also apply to, in the black community, us adopting some cultural characteristics that are more conducive to progress?
Well, ours means cultural grounding.
Okay.
And see, I use the term all the time, even for them, the other people. I use cultural grounding, but especially for us. And cultural grounding means being rooted in your own culture, in dignity affirming, life enhancing values and practices. See, how we understand ourselves dictates, at least shapes, how we assert ourselves. And if we have diminished or deformed conception of ourselves, that's how we assert ourselves. And people say, I'm an in, and I'm going to act like one. You already know that they have a self-hating, self-diminishing, okay, and self-deforming conception of themselves. And that's how they're going to assert themselves in the world.
Okay.
So what we need to do is cultivate a life of the mind that is always dignity affirming and life enhancing and represents the best of what it means to be African and human in the world.
I love it. So let's go a little back to Maryland. You're from Maryland. You're
Yes.
one of 14 siblings.
Yes.
So share with us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I was born on the eastern shore of Maryland. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Gloria Richardson, Sojourner Truth. So I think that it's very important for us to always understand the history in which we're born, so that we know we come into and enter a conversation already being going, having been started long ago. So my mother and father taught me righteous ways to stand and walk in the world as an African person. We say a black person because they were race conscious. They were race people, okay? And so they taught us to do that which was good for the world, and especially for what we call then the race. They always say, do things that enhance or better the race. That's what they would say. Never do anything that would dishonor your mother and your father, your family, or your people. and always strive for excellence in everything you do.
So
So I grew up with that understanding. My sister and brothers had a similar understanding.
And I was going to ask you, were your parents, revolutionaries? Were they involved in the civil rights movement? How did you get so engaged in the movement?
They were very serious Christians who believed in good in the world. And they believed that one of the ways that we express our goodness is always service to others. So they stress being socially active and serving our community and the world at large. So service was a fundamental virtue, an example of moral excellence for them. So I just turned that into an activism, a social activism of engaging the oppressor and daring to struggle and daring to win.
So do your siblings join you in your effort? Do all of them, or is it?
No, some of them do, and some of them aren't. Some of them are just like everybody else, trying to make do and trying to live a good life against overwhelming odds.
Okay, all right, very good. Now you were born Ron Everett.
No, I wasn't born that. That was the name
That was
given
the name
me.
given to you.
I was born African.
All right, correct, sister. But you changed your name to
I
your.
changed my name.
When and why did you change your name? And tell me the meaning and the significance of your
We
name.
changed our name in the 60s. See, all of us were, whether people want to admit it or not, all of us were influenced by the Nation of Islam that came with a black conversation that insisted that you be black, right? And so at the same time, the African countries were rising up, getting their independence, and we learned that we were Africans, okay? So I'm asking myself, why I'm an African, I got a European name. And Malcolm said, you ever heard of a Chinese named Whitfield or a Japanese named Jones? You know something's wrong. So if it's wrong for a yellow person to have a white man name, what does it sound like for a black man to have a white man name? So I said, and also, Quarles more in his little book, it's something about the danger of the word Negro. And he was saying, free people name themselves. Pets and enslaved persons are named by their masters.
We just got a clapping engineer today. You just amen and everything that Dr. Karenga is saying. You amen and.
But it's real. You know it's real.
Steve, you got a question? Okay, so let's move forward. But you didn't tell us the meaning. So what is the meaning? The significance of your name.
My name, first of all, my first name, Maulana, is a name that people in my organization gave me. It means master teacher.
Okay.
Okay? Because I love to teach. That's my first vocation, right? And then second is my name. That's Swahili, and I have three kinds of names which represent my commitment to Pan-Africanism.
Okay.
I don't choose one ethnic group or one nation in Africa. I choose the whole of Africa as my heritage and history, and all Africans as my people,
Okay.
both on the continent and throughout the diaspora. But anyhow, so the first name is a Swahili name, and that we use because Swahili we chose as a non-ethnic group language that actually is the most widely spread language in the continent. Okay, so the second one is Ndabizita. My name is Maulana Ndabizita Karenga. Maulana means master teacher. Ndabizita means constant concern of the enemy or the oppressor. That is, wherever the oppressors meet, they talk about what to do with me. You understand? That's a Zulu war name. It's a struggle name. So I like to teach, but I also like to struggle.
I love it.
And then my last name is Gikuyu, and that means keeper of the tradition. I'm a traditionalist. I'm a person that believes that culture is the fundamental way of being human in the world. That there's no other way for me to be human except as being African. And I'm supposed to honor that and to expand that and to build on that in honor of my family and my people and my own humanity. So that's what my names come. They become at the same time points of focus for my life vocation.
So say your complete name.
Maulana Ndabizita Karenga. Ndabizita is Zulu, and Karenga is.
Oh, that's on your.
I'm sorry. Let me start again. Maulana is Swahili, Ndabizita is Zulu, and Karenga is Gikuyu.
And all that's on your driver's license?
All of that. Yes.
Okay.
All of that. Well, don't think that's different. If you got Schwarzenegger on your driver's license, you shouldn't have a problem with Ndabizita.
So let's talk about the US organization.
Yes.
So share with us about now. It was started in 1965. Now, was this as a result of the Watts riots, or was this kind of was the timing coincidental that you started around the Watts riots?
watch revolt, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
I created the organization. I called people together at my house and created the organization in September of '65.
Okay.
After the revolt, after the Watts revolt, you know. And when we talk about revolt rather than riot, riot is just a uprising without any serious self-consciousness or any serious political goal. But
Agreed.
a revolt is a collective act of people to achieve three things: self-defense, self-respect, and self-determination, self-respect, and self-defense. In other words, when black people rose up, they were declaring their right to rule themselves, to control the space they occupy. Second, they were defending themselves against brutal police abuse. And then third, they were seeking, in terms of reaffirming their respect for themselves by demonstrating people couldn't just walk over them. So they first practiced self-determination, and in that they reaffirmed their self-respect by, as Malcolm said, doing what other people would do if someone attacked them. That's stand up and saying enough. And then, of course, the self-defense came in the process of showing respect for ourselves. So I think it's very important for us to understand that our organization came into being in the midst of struggle. It's called the organization Us. We say informally Us organization, but it's really just us. And we say Us organization is separated from us, our people, right? But it's really us. And us means us as distinct from them. And us is a communitarian African focus. That is to show the stress on the collective and the community rather than simply the isolated person. Okay, that's what it is. And we are organized around 7 fundamental principles, which are both moral values and a political practice. The first is umoja, which means unity. These are called the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles. People know them through Kwanza, the 7 principles of Kwanza. But actually, they're the 7 principles of Kawaida. Kawaida is my philosophy. And my philosophy, Kawaida, is defined as an ongoing synthesis of the best of African thought and practice in constant exchange with the world. So these principles, umoja, unity; kujichagulia, self-determination; ujima, collective work and responsibility; ujamaa, cooperative economics; nia, purpose; kuumba, creativity; and imani, faith. So that is our basic program, and it's an overarching one. So when we say, for example, let's just take the project of umoja, to strive for unity in the family, community, nation, and race. That's a big project.
It is.
Starts from the family to Pan-Africanism. And those are political and social practices.
Okay. All right. So now Us was based on, like you said, social and cultural change for blacks. But it
Yes,
also
social-
had a military component. Why?
It does. The military was called paramilitary, really. It was called Simba Wachanga, the Young Lions. And what we did during the 60s, many of the groups had defense units to them, defense for the community. And we trained for the struggle that we anticipate would come. And so what we wanted to do to be ready. People used to say, arm yourself or you harm yourself. You don't have a peace, you
Arm
ain't gonna
yourself
find no
or you
man.
harm yourself.
I'm sorry, that's what we used to say.
Hey.
So a lot
you can
of
say that
times,
now.
and I'm glad you asked that, because a lot of times people have a kind of truncated and wrong conception of history, only think one group was armed or believed in armed self-defense for the community. But in fact, Malcolm, Robert Williams, and we didn't know it then, but now we know, of course, Ida B. Wells, and certainly the Deacons for Defense, all of them had an armed initiative to the struggle.
Okay. Now the
So it's not like we just thought of this ourselves. It's a history that we're working on and building on.
No, I love it. Now, the FBI eventually targeted Us under its
Yes.
counterintelligence program initiative. So share with us about that whole experience.
Oh, yeah. See, actually target the whole movement.
Okay.
And what a lot of times people
You
say
talking about the whole Us movement?
the
Or
whole Black
the
freedom
whole-
movement.
Okay, all right, very
And when
good.
I say the Black freedom movement, I mean both the civil rights phase, most represented by Martin Luther King, people like Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, and then the Black Power movement, whose definitive figure, of course, is Malcolm X, but also Kwame Ture and the rest. And hopefully we've contributed to that.
Absolutely.
Ram, Snick and his Black Power, Coy and his Black Power move. So what the FBI did, J. Edgar Hoover called agents from all over the country to come up with what he called hard-hitting ideas to disrupt, destroy, defame, and otherwise neutralize all real and potential black leadership. what they wanted is to destroy our capacity to unite. Sometimes people say, oh, they were just against one group. That's not real. The group that suffered most was the NOI, but people don't even talk about that. And we lost greatly by the disruption they caused.
So define NOI for our audience.
NOI is Nation of Islam.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's
the
okay.
Nation of Islam. You know, you see the split between the Messenger Muhammad and Malcolm. You see the nation go for a little decline. All right? You see these other groups. But our group was especially targeted also because not only did our people were driven. They provoked a struggle between us and the Panthers, right? They shot at the Panthers, said it was us, shot at us, said it was the Panthers. Then we finally had a shootout at UCLA. So that actually undermined the movement's capacity to unify itself. Many of our people had to go underground. Some of our people are still out of the country in exile. They trumped up charges on me and had me in captivity, political imprisonment for 4 years. Some of our people are still in captivity on trumped up charges, so that we suffered a lot from that. But, you know, we're resilient. And we didn't come blaming nobody, you know, like some people, a whole program and just somebody else in the black community did something to them. We stood up. We said, look, you can't call the caveman out and expect him not to come after you. You got to be honest. If you're going to call people out, you got to know that they're going to come after you.
Absolutely.
So the reality is that we have to pick up ourselves, wipe the blood off our face, bandage our wounds, and begin to struggle again. And that's what our organization, us, did, and what we're doing now.
So it's just amazing because I'm a graduate of UCLA, so I know the climate was totally different when I was there. So just tell me what UCLA was like. I mean, my uncle was Melvin X, and he was on UCLA's campus, and I mean, I didn't know him personally because he died before he was killed by some white police officers.
I'm sorry to hear that. May the good he left last forever.
But tell us about how UCLA culture was like during that time.
Right. Well, first it was, you know, like in the early 60s, it was good. It was real massive. People started going to the movement. In fact, many of us dropped out. I left UCLA to join the movement in '64. I was working on my doctorate. And people asked us, what are you going to do with all this knowledge? And we said, you know, we have to answer Mary McLeod Bethune, who said, knowledge is the prime need of the hour, but people want to know what you're going to do with your knowledge. And she said, we have to discover the dawn and then share it with the masses who need it most. So we had to get out and apply our knowledge. So that's one of the reasons I created Kwanza as an institution that would help the movement, bring us together, give us a culture grounding, make us turn back to ourselves, reach inside ourselves, and bring forth the best of what it means to be African and human in the fullest sense.
Okay, so that's an excellent lead in. We're going to take a quick commercial break, Richard, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Kwanza and the creation of Kwanza and how you came about that and how it became such this national phenomenon in the black community, just across international phenomenon over the past 47 years. So we're talking with Dr. Maulana Karenga about the black experience here on the Dialogue. We're going to take your calls after the half hour at 323-247-7443. Again, 323-247-7443. If you have any questions for the Honorable Dr. Maulana Karenga, please give us a call here at the Dialogue. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. So look at the candidate commercials and make sure you choose wisely.
Brother, we can't quit until we get our share. I've worked on jobs with my feet in my hand. You know, all the work I did was for the other man. And now we the man's a chance to do things for ourselves. We're tired of beating our head against the wall and working for someone else. Say it loud.
One in job growth in Los Angeles. We worked hard to revitalize neighborhoods and to create jobs. I led in cutting business taxes and on pension reform. It was tough, but right. Now let's do the basics better, like answering phones, filling potholes, and picking up trash. Because doing the basics right makes life better for families and makes growth possible.
Eric Garcetti for mayor. Practical problem solver. Proven results.
Los Angeles on the verge of bankruptcy, deficits as far as the eye can see. And there's one leader who has what it takes to clean up the mess at City Hall. Wendy Gruhl, public school mom. Gruhl served Mayor Bradley and President Clinton, created good jobs at DreamWorks. As controller, Gruhl found $160 million in waste. As mayor, she'll sweat the small stuff and fight for the things that matter most. Jobs, better schools, and emergency response you can count on. Wendy Gruhl for mayor.
WELOVE 108 FM.
Welcome back. We are fighting the power here in the dialogue in the studio with Dr. Maulana Karenga, just educating us with just all this knowledge. My brain is just bursting. I was just telling him at the commercial break, we need to have him back. So join us because we have 5 weeks this month in May, and we're going to have to invite Dr. Karenga back because there's so much knowledge that we're getting from him that we just can't possibly compartmentalize into just this 1 hour show. Now, Dr. Karenga, before we went to the commercial break, we were talking about Kwanza. Now, how did you come up with the creation of Kwanza? Were you just like, Christmas is whack, we need to have our own little holiday? I mean, so how did you come up with Kwanza and why?
I created Kwanza in the context of the Black Liberation Movement, okay? As I said earlier, when I left UCLA working on my doctorate, my first doctorate, I was thinking about what could I do with my knowledge. And one of the things I wanted to do was to contribute to the struggle in my own way. And one of the first things I did was to build my organization, US. And then I began to develop, while I was at UCLA, a philosophy of culture and social change and social struggle. Okay. And that was Kawaida. And out of that, I created 7 fundamental principles I saw as important to practice and to struggle. And I'll get to that in a minute. So I said, how can I build an institution that would last beyond me and last beyond the movement itself, but would ground Black people in their own history and give them a framework by which they could ground themselves, orient themselves, and create a legacy worthy of the name and history African. So I created Kwanza for 3 basic reasons. One, to reaffirm our rootedness in African culture. I'm a culture nationalist. And as I said before, I believe culture is not just song and dance. Culture is the totality of thought and practice by which a people creates itself, celebrates, sustains, and develops itself, and introduces itself to history and humanity. And so I wanted to reaffirm our rootedness in African history and culture because we were lifted out of our history and culture by the Holocaust of enslavement and made a footnote and forgotten casualty in European history and culture. And so as Cabral said, the great revolutionary theorist said, the struggle was in part to return to our own history, okay? And then second, I created Kwanza in order to give us a time when we as Africans all over the world could come together, reaffirm the bonds between us, and meditate on the awesome meaning of being African in the world. What does it mean to be the fathers and mothers, not only of humanity, but of human civilization, to stand up and speak the first human truth, and to teach the basic disciplines of human knowledge in the Nile Valley, and so that all the peoples of the world, Jews, Gentiles, Hyksos, Hittites, Greeks, Romans, all come to study with us. What does that mean? And how do we build on that great legacy so that we can speak our special culture truth to the world, make our own unique contribution to how this world is reconceived and reconstructed? And the third, and I want to say that in that regard, one of the beautiful things about Kwanza is that more than any other time, people remember their Africanness. They might wear African clothes, they talk African values, they tell African narrative, they study African history, both on the continent and in the diaspora. Not just on the continent, but in the diaspora also. Now, over 20 million people, maybe 30 million, all over the world, throughout the world African community, celebrate this holiday. That's quite an achievement. And Black people should be praised for that.
Now, why did you choose the month of December?
Can I finish this?
Oh, yeah,
I'm going to tell you about December. But one of the things I want to say is that the beauty of that is we didn't ask anybody, could we have it? We declared it, celebrated. Then the news came, and they said, let's report on it. And the third reason I created Kwanza was to introduce and reaffirm African community term values that stress family, community, and culture. And that's what Kwanza is, a celebration of family, community, and culture. And, of course, the hub and hinge on which the holiday turns are the 7 principles, Nguzo Saba, which, again, are Umoja, unity, Kujichagulia, self-determination, Ujima, collective work and responsibility, Ujamaa, cooperative economics, Neo, purpose, Kumba, creativity, and Imani, faith.
Okay.
I created in December for culture authenticity. I studied African cultures, learned different African language. And there was one holiday called Umkosi, that was in Zululand. And it celebrated in the end of December, beginning of January. And was 7 days and became a motto. But I also studied other first fruit harvest holiday. At the end of the year is a time, as the Akan people say, when the edges of the year meet. And there's a time for making strong decisions, for making commitments to what you're going to do, but also for assessment of where you were, and second, where you ought to be going. So on the last day of Kwanza is December 26th to January 1st, a 7-day holiday to represent the 7 principles, right? On the last day of Imani, we're supposed to, it's called the day of meditation, Siku Yata Muli. We're supposed to sit down and measure ourselves in the mirror of the best of our culture. And to do that by asking 3 questions. Who am I? Am I really who I am? And am I all I ought to be? To see where we stand and recommit ourselves to our highest values, values that stress and strengthen family, community, and culture, and represent the best of what it means to be African and human in the world.
I love it. I love it. I believe we have a caller, Richard. Oh, they dropped the call. Okay. So you said you started with the principles. So how did it become so international? How did it become so, world known? I mean, was that intentional or was that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
First, we just started with the organization Us. We started it, okay? I called it the first one. We organized. I had to create the symbols for it, create the philosophy behind it, okay? And then we began to introduce it to the movement. And the nationalist community embraced it. And then students from different parts of the African world, from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America, from Europe, even black people from these places, they came, they learned it, and they took it back, okay? And then they began to practice it. We get calls and emails and correspondence in general from all over the world African community. We get it in French and Spanish and in Portuguese, in different languages, and certainly in Swahili and Zulu. But we get these messages reaffirming the importance of our being African in the world and the importance of celebrating Kwanzaa as that unifying practice of black people.
Okay, we do have a caller. Okay, hi, caller. You're on with the dialogue. You have a comment or question for Dr. Karenga? Hello? Okay, they hung up. Now, how did Hallmark get involved? I mean, how did it become? Did they license it?
We live in capitalism. I don't have any license. See, we didn't have any understanding of economics. See, we should have been practiced with the Muslims on that. They were one of the few black groups that had this, in the nationalist community, that had this understanding of the importance of economics. But we just made it available to black people. We didn't patent anything. We didn't say, look, you can't do this. And so what happened is they ran in there and they started using it. Capitalism sells everything, including women's womb. They sell body parts, Capitalism is, this system that is based on private ownership of property and the perpetual pursuit of profit. So they might sell anything. So they'll try to penetrate the Kwanzaa market. And what I want to do is reassure people that even though they used to ask every year, is Kwanzaa commercialized? No, it's not commercialized. And I want to give black people credit for that because black people didn't let them sell them so much of the material that it undermined the black market in Kwanzaa item. And I want to make a distinction here between capitalism penetration of the Kwanzaa market and trying to take over Kwanzaa, selling us symbols of ourselves, and the necessary practice that black vendors, black artists engage in to provide us with those symbols we need to practice our holiday.
Okay. Steve, you have a question?
I have a few questions, but I'll try to wrap it up together. But I just want to, again, commend you on how you have created something that within your lifetime and in a few short years has spread internationally like that.
Absolutely.
And I just want to know: are there some lessons that we can learn in how you're able to disseminate, a cultural item like that to other issues in our culture or values systems that might be beneficial that we can start to get to take hold? Because you've been in the struggle for a long time. Sometimes it's hard for things to take hold.
I know. I'm thinking you're talking about 7 days. I mean, this needs to be 365 days.
Exactly.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, what we need to do is practice the values every day. All right, but we do need special holiday because that represents special marking, and we always must make things special.
Right.
Otherwise, they become leveled and trivialized. So that the holiday is important. Okay, because it reminds us of who we are and what we ought to be about. I think the lessons we can learn from this is, first of all, Kwanza, like Kawaida, and like our organization, us in general, we stress study. We stress excellence, right? African must mean excellence. And I worked a long time on Kwanza, developing the principle. I had to choose them. I had to read these different cultures and learn these languages and be able to put that into a system that was practicable as well as grounded in solid principle. People always ask me, did you ever think it would spread like this? And I always answered this. I'm no prophet, so I could not predict it would. But I believe that if we could create something of value that spoke to the best of what it means to be African and human, that gave people a value system that aided them in grounding their lives or in their life, teaching their children and leaving a legacy to pass on, that they would embrace it. Right. And they did. So the lesson from this is, first, be committed to your people. Learn your culture. Stop saying I'm black so I know it. A tree is a tree. That don't mean it knows that it's a tree. Right. And if you could just know things by being things, we wouldn't need any kind of education. Nobody else comes up and tells me let's say a French person, so I don't need to study. I don't need to go to school or learn. No, we can't do things like that. You can learn from the street. You can learn from your house. You can learn from your community. But you must have disciplined study. You must learn the world. I translated from the ancient Egyptian hieroglyph a sacred text we call the Hosea from ancient Egypt. And there's a verse that says, study the function and the nature and function of the heavens. Study the nature and function of the earth. Do not say you're wise, but set yourself to become so. Study everything, right? Cultivate a life of the mind. So if we make things excellent in any field we go, then we can make it go. Next, you got to trust your people. See, I didn't believe in the pathological nature of black people. I didn't believe they did. I believe if black people are shown things and they're convinced that is of value to them, they will embrace it. Now, they embrace a lot of other things because we're in a culture that teaches us spectacle, that teaches us convenience, that teaches us even to hate ourselves. So we must struggle. That's the next thing that you learn from this. You've got to struggle. You got to struggle to create it. You got to struggle to distribute it and make it stay. And you got to struggle to sustain it. There is no alternative to struggle. We teach that struggle is the most characteristic aspect of the human personality. We struggle to come into being. That's called birth. We struggle to make the most out of being. That's called life. And we struggle not to go out of being. That's called the quest for immortality.
Now, there has been some criticism about Kwanza, especially against the antebellum-minded, whites like the Wisconsin State Senator Glenn Grothman, who I recently heard on CNN.
You don't even need to mention him. Just mention it. Because you advertise him by mentioning. Just mention the criticism. What is the criticism? And you know it's fake, so just go on and mention it. Tell us what it is.
But that is an instrument of racial division, and it claims to criticize and design.
Well, why don't he go to the community, to the Jewish community, and tell them Hanukkah is?
Can I get a clap on that?
He'd be scared to death to do that. Hey, and why don't he go to the Mexican community?
But he's not the only one.
No, wait a minute. Why don't he go to the Well, I'm talking about the white people talking all that wild talk.
Yeah. That wild talk.
Oh, yeah, cave conversation. They can't stand black people doing excellent things. And I was so proud. I was so proud of black people in Wisconsin that stood up, and then black people around the world and whipped him back into silence.
They whipped him back into silence.
Right back into silence. And the man needed to take care of his own life. He's having some issues. He's just trying to get elected, play to that cave consciousness that comes out in white people sometimes. And what he needs to do is to speak truth and do justice. He's not doing that. He's trying to picnic on black people. Why is that?
Because, that's indicative to me of something that I just want to say. I was going to say that when you were talking about the FBI and COINTELPRO, and given that we know that, they don't even try to dispute that anymore, that our arm of our government that actually made it its point to try to undermine black progress.
Yes.
And then we're even now today in a climate where white elected officials will go out in public and try to basically dictate to black people what we can and cannot celebrate, and try to impose their standards of authenticity on what we do and don't do. And I just don't understand how in that climate, I understand, I don't try to, I'm listening to you about the pathology of blacks, but I just don't understand how we aren't fired up about that.
Oh, well, we were. That's what I like about it. It beat it down into silence. I mean, all over, even middle-class blacks that are usually very careful not to alienate their white liberal friend. They stood up and said, why are you even questioning what we do? Why are you even concerned with what we do?
Right.
Especially because it's positive and good, and you dare to question that? I mean, spend time on asking why is the U.S. torturing people in Guantanamo? Why are they invading other people's culture? Why are they, in fact, doing things that they should not be doing? Okay? They're stealing people's resources, their oil, their water. Okay? So, hey, give me a break.
This is why we have to have you back, because I didn't even get through half my question. We want to talk about the Million Man March, because many may know that you authored the mission statement for the Million Man March. So why don't you discuss the main objectives of that historic gathering?
Well, that was called by, as you know, Minister Louis Farrakhan, as you know, and he deserves a lot of praise for that, and so does the nation, who formed the backbone of the structure for that, the initial thrust of that. But we built in over 300 cities, basic local organizing communities. Some of them still exist, and we put together the largest march this country has ever seen in Washington. 2 million people.
Wow.
And the women did the same thing, but they did even more than we did in Philadelphia.
They did more than 2 million?
Give them credit. Yeah, they did. We did about 1 million plus half, but they did 2 million. And what I like about it is they were inspired by us and what we did. They want black men to stand up. And we argued that we've got to put emphasis on black men standing up.
Can we get a clap on that, please? Yes, absolutely. Because brothers, stand up.
Because as we said in the mission statement, until black men stand up, black men and black women can't stand together.
That is right.
And achieve the awesome responsibility we have to. That's just a reality, And so we put together a statement that argued that we were bringing together black men to reaffirm the best values of our social justice tradition, which requires respect for the dignity and rights of the human person, economic justice, meaningful political participation, shared power, cultural integrity, mutual respect for all people, and uncompromising resistance to social forces and structures which deny and limit thee. And one of the things we said about it is we had an agenda, and we said the first thing we have to do is to make sure we have a political agenda. We have to put it down. And some of the things, just real quick, that we argued that we had to do is a massive ongoing voter registration of black people that's independent, creating and sustaining a progressive independent political movement, building a Black United Front, establishing a Black Economic Development Fund, reaffirming and strengthening family, and this is key, through quality male-female relations based on principles of equality, complementarity, mutual respect, and shared responsibility, and love, life, and struggle.
Oh, you need to say that one again, because I don't think that's heard in L.A. I don't think brothers understand.
Reaffirming and strengthening, okay, the family to quality male-female relations.
Quality.
Based on equality. That's the first thing. Second, complementarity. You fulfill me, I fulfill you. You help me realize my goal, I help you realize. I bring you goodness, you bring me goodness.
Right.
And we do good things
Why
together.
don't brothers understand that?
Well, we just have to keep
Ooh-wee,
telling
don't you even start with that. Don't you even. I won't even consider myself a strong man if I stand here and let you say that.
There you go.
Can you turn his mic off?
What you mean, and see, this is key here. What you mean is not enough do it, or we need more to do it. You got to build on it. You got to concede that some do it. If we always put out the pathological, if we always put out the deficient, we also demoralize those who want to do good and who are doing good.
Excellent.
So recognize the good
Excellent.
in the brothers that are
Go
doing
ahead,
well.
go ahead.
I just want you to do that. Then we also put in
I love my brothers.
we also had in the mission statement the ongoing struggle for reparations in the fullest sense, you know? And then we also talked about the struggle against police brutality. Also the critical organizing task of organizing community as a solid wall in the struggle against drug, crime, and violence in the community, which we see as interrelated and which must be joined with the struggle to reduce and end poverty, increase employment, strengthen fatherhood, motherhood, and family, support parents, provide education and prevention programs, and expose and reject those who deal in death for our community.
I love it.
Okay? And then we talked about also expanding support for African-centered independent schools, also more parent activity in public education and supportive
Absolutely.
education. No matter what other kind of schools we have to maintain a strong public education system. We got to stop just blaming the teachers. We got to hold them accountable, but we can't put the burden on them. They have to have resources, they have to have retraining, and they have to have parental as well as government support for the kind of things they're doing. Also continuing continuing to struggle against negative media images. You seem to surprise how that undermines our children and our adults' mind when they always see the negative. So much so, lumping life has become the model for black life on television.
Yeah.
And in fact, the black intellectuals, many of them, not all of them, I got to keep my own principles here, many of them play to that by pretending that good things black people do and great things black people do is not real. Only lumping life, walking the street, hoeing and doing pimp things and doing gangster rap, that's real.
Right.
That's not real.
No, it's
that's
not.
deformed.
No, it's
and
not.
what we have to do, see, they're making a distinction between actual and real. Actual is just what's happening, and it's just happening in a certain space. But real is what a thing ought to be when it comes into its fullness.
Right.
And we are best when we come into our fullness. The fullness of ourselves is righteous and beautiful.
These agenda items sound like ours for our Black agenda for the BCC covenant.
I'm telling you.
I mean,
and we introduced this. It's a reflection in our BCC Black Community Candidate Covenant, which we put out here for discussion, and which we want to join in conversation with you in a dialogue. And we want to thank you and Steve Starlett for taking the initiative to bring us together May 11th for this dialogue, because we need this dialogue, because we must make right choices. We must make informed choices, right? We can't just have somebody tell us and then we go do it.
So,
we must decide for ourselves.
So share
There-
this.
Can I make this
Yeah,
point?
absolutely.
There is no substitute for an aware, organized, and engaged people constantly involved in a multiplicity of activities to define, defend, and promote their interests.
I love it. So share with us a little bit about this covenant. Share with us a little bit more in detail about
Well,
the covenant.
our covenant came as a result of years of at least 3 years of building the BCCLA, the Black Community Clergy and Labor Line, of doing what we call like brainstorming and thinking deep about how to create a black agenda, and at the same time, right, introduce it as a conversation in the community. See, many of the agendas that have been created before, they failed because they never became a conversation in the community.
Right.
They became a reference point, but not a resource.
Right.
We must turn things into a resource rather than a reference. And so this covenant actually lays out, first of all, what we should be about, the critical issues that we are involved in and concerned about: employment, housing, transportation, economic development, education, legal justice, health. Okay, and it's a living document, so that as we discuss, even after we discuss May 11th, we can add some more things to it. Because we have to work together. We have to build this Black United Front.
We have to. Okay. You're absolutely right. So share with us a little bit more about the BCCLA and how can people get involved in the organization and help with the movement.
Yes, we have a steering committee and a general assembly. The steering committee, we meet every day. I'm a vice president. Our president is Reverend Eric P. Lee Hodati. Okay?
We had Eric. We had Eric on labor union. Give Eric a little shout out.
He's a strong brother, you know? He's a strong brother.
We love Eric.
My co-vice chair with me is Larry Aubrey. And so we meet, our steering committee meets every Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock. See, a lot of times people can't get up like that. But we meet in the 60s. We used to meet at 6.
What?
Yeah, we could meet as early as 6 because we wanted to have long meetings before people went to work. So we would do it. So this is a good example of commitment. Then we have a General Assembly meeting. We meet every month, once a month, the third Wednesday in the month. So anybody interested, you can come. Your leader, come, and we can work you in. We have committees. You can join. And then, of course, you have, if you want to be on the steering committee, that is a process, a longer process. But just to come into the General Assembly, you just have to come. And you come to help, and you come to build that united front, to exchange information, to network, and to imagine a whole new community, society, and world we together can bring into being with our cooperation.
Now, how can we mentor a new generation into the struggle? I mean, you know, a lot of these young folks don't even know anything about the civil rights movement. Or they know of Malcolm and Martin, but they really aren't involved and engaged. How do we get a new generation involved?
What we got to do is ask, how can we create more conscious and involved people? Because there are some people who are conscious and involved. See, I'm always staying away from the deficient model. If we start from zero, that's where we're going to end up, complaining all the time. What we've got to say is, where are the good people? Where are the people that are doing what you think is right? How can we add to them? How can we help them? So we start, Starlett, by actually finding people who are already doing that and building their capacity. Excellent. And then let them, as peer groups, help also to go out, like we said about black men. Black men who are conscious got to go and reach for the unconscious brother and bring that brother in. And so it's so with the young people. I teach people all the time. I've taught thousands of people, both in college, in adult school, in public meetings. I lecture across the country regularly. So I teach all the time. So people are getting the consciousness. They have to, and that's another thing from this. We have to build a movement. You asked about Kwanza. One of the things that helped Kwanza is it was a movement. It was a movement holiday, and the movement took it where it needed to be. So we need to rebuild our movement.
Absolutely.
We really need to rebuild our movement.
Okay, and so we're coming to the end of the hour. We definitely are going to have you back because there's so much that we still need to discuss. But before you do, share with us what's happening at Cal State Long Beach, and they're and the schools trying to take the program from a department.
If I can show you.
Absolutely.
Yes. See, this is a student. I haven't seen this on Cal State Long Beach since the 60s, 70s, I should say, 70, when they did. And the black men, you see the black men in there along with the black women. It's a nice portrait of what we like to see in the movement. What happened is that the dean decided that, there's a changed climate at CSULB. They're not as friendly to ethnic studies as they once were. So they start with the vulnerability of black studies because they have, first of all, not recruited as many black people as before. Danny Tabor was there as an alumni the other day. We had Africana Studies. The Department of Africana Studies had an Africana Studies Day yesterday. And we had Danny Tabor, some of our alumni. And Danny Tabor was pointing out when he came, there were 3,700 black people on campus. Now, it's thousands maybe. So close to 1,000. So what happens here is that and Valerie Bordeaux, who's over recruitment, she does an excellent job, but she doesn't have the resources and the staff that she needs to do the kind of recruitment that she needs. And so what happened is the dean said he was going to drop our department. He proposed to drop our department to a program status, which means we'll lose our capacity even to teach our own class. We have to ask other people to help us teach our own classes. And he got this obscure, arbitrary rule that you have to have so many faculty, like 6 instead of, we have 5 but two of those are getting ready to retire, so he doesn't count those. They call FERC people. So he's saying that we don't have enough. But for 7 years, he didn't hire one black person in a black study. So what they want to do is penalize us for something they did, right? Second, this is only obtains at Long Beach, at Cal State Northridge, at Cal State Dominguez Hill, San Diego State. You don't have no faculty limit for a department. There's one person at Dominguez in his apartment, right? And so what happened when I say one person, one tenured person?
Right.
So I'm saying to him, look, man, waive that restriction and give us the faculty sufficient to make our department. Because, number one, black studies is valuable to that university.
Absolutely.
They're using our name and they're using us as a reference to say they practice diversity. But as I told the president, it's a good thing it's in this book. You might not find it anywhere else. And it's not just what you claim, it's what you do. How do you actualize it? How do you actualize? So I'm for diversity. And you don't put a budget to it and a policy to it, you don't support it. I don't care what you say. So we say we got two demands, two needs and issues. And that is one, waive this particular requirement. And second, give us the hires we need to create, to build and sustain a viable and vital department. That's it.
And how can people get involved in this movement at Long Beach and help you?
They can write the president and ask them what's going on and support our maintaining our status.
Okay.
They can CC it to the provost and the dean, and they can also have their children to make sure they take black studies classes. You got to take black studies classes,
Absolutely.
you know, and they've got to train them to appreciate their own culture. You know that if we, and that's another thing, and also put pressure on Long Beach to recruit more black people. They go to the churches every year, but the reality is that's pro forma.
Okay.
Not a lot comes out of that, you see. So what we need is recruitment, we need retention, and we need those our students to take our classes, to declare majors and minors, and to strengthen our department. If we do that, that's it.
Okay.
We got it.
All right. Well, Dr. Karenga, please come back and share with us towards the end of the month what's happening and a little bit more detail about your candidate covenant.
Yes. What I wanted to just say about this is that this covenant that we've created here, putting down fundamental needs of the black community, fundamental interests, it will serve several essential functions which aim not only to achieve concrete policy and political goals of the community and candidate, but also to create a new way of political thinking and political practice. First, our covenant seeks to be a rating system for candidates and thus a basis for community support or non-support of a given candidate. Also, the covenant will serve as a central point of reference for community conversation and media initiative, which the BCCLA will launch to cultivate community commitment to this covenant process and its terms, and to foster an expanded community engagement. We need people, there's no substitute for community engagement, right, in this process. And it will also serve the essential foundation for holding ourselves and other people accountable. For the practices and the policies which achieve these particular and shared goals. Yeah. And finally, this covenant-based process of expanded political education, mobilization, participation based on informed choice, clear terms, and mutual commitment will be of shared benefit to both community and candidate, for it will serve to open and expand a critical way to truly cooperate for common good, that is, building and sustaining the just and good city and society we all want and deserve to live in.
I love it. Can we get a round of applause for Dr. Maulana Karenga? Thank you so much for coming on the dialogue today. Callers, I don't know what happened to you, guys fell off, but Dr. Karenga is going to come back at the end of the month. We're going to continue to talk about the candidate covenant as well. He has a new book that we didn't even get a chance to even talk about. So please join us towards the end of the month. We're going to invite Dr. Karenga back. Definitely join us next Saturday, May 11th, where you'll see him on our panel talking about cultural competency and the need for
and cultural grounding.
And cultural grounding.
That's it. That's
cultural
key,
grounding
Steve.
for the Black agenda. Thank you so much, Steve, for sitting in on the show today. Thank you, Wave Newspapers, for joining us again. Thank you, Dr. Karenga. Thank you, Tia Moyo. I see you out there. Love you very much. We are signing off. Join us next week as we talk about the Black experience in creating sustainable urban communities. I'm Starlett Quarles, signing off as my mama's child and my daddy's baby girl. Until next week.
Hallelujah, a hallelujah, 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 whoa, a hallelujah, a hallelujah, a hallelujah, 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 whoa, a hallelujah, 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 a hallelujah, holla, holla, a hallelujah, the prophet black Jesus, a big beat with the bass, arrangement, each piece in its place, a BK, and no LA, a boogeyman in that gold DJ, a good card, yes y'all, walk it out, make it run, lift it off, I like a dog, from up above, and when they rock, they say that's my one, 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 that's my one. I turn it off, pump it up. When it feel good to you, it's good for real. But when it's real, baby, that's how it's supposed to feel. Testify, hallelujah, the private black Jesus. Hallelujah, a hallelujah, 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 whoa, a hallelujah, a hallelujah, a hallelujah, 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 whoa, a hallelujah, a hallelujah. A hallelujah, holla, holla, a hallelujah, sweet black Jesus. Matthew 6:33, read and believe in the book. A hallelujah, hallelujah, holla, holla, a hallelujah, prophet black Jesus.
Let the fish fry proceed.
Hallelujah, prophet black Jesus.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.